A German Shepherd discovered living his entire life at the end of a 6-foot chain. His world limited to a small dirt circle around a wooden doghouse. For 7 years, he endured scorching summers and freezing winters, his only shelter a dilapidated structure that barely protected him from the elements. When rescuers finally freed him from his chains, they discovered a dog who had never known kindness, yet somehow maintained a spark of hope. But just as he began to experience love and freedom for the first time, something unexpected happened that left everyone involved absolutely stunned. Get ready for an incredible, true story of resilience, second chances, and a twist that no one could have predicted. The property on the outskirts of rural Greenville, Mississippi, looked abandoned at first glance. Paint peeled from the small clapboard house, and junk cars dotted the overgrown yard. But local mail carrier Diane Reynolds knew someone still lived there. An elderly man who rarely emerged, and a German Shepherd who had spent years chained to the same spot under a gnarled oak tree. "I've been delivering mail here for 9 years," Diane told the Sunflower County Animal Control Officer, Tom Mercer. "That dog has been chained in the exact same spot since I started this route. Summer, winter, rain, or shine. Never free, never inside, just existing." After multiple welfare check reports and several unsuccessful attempts to contact the owner, authorities finally gained legal access to check on both the elderly resident and the dog. What they found was heartrending. The German Shepherd, approximately 8 years old based on later veterinary assessment, had spent his entire adult life tethered to a heavy logging chain attached to a crude collar that had become embedded in his neck as he grew. His shelter consisted of a rotting doghouse missing half its roof. His water came from a rusted drum that collected rainwater, and feeding appeared sporadic at best. Despite his circumstances, the dog showed no aggression when Officer Mercer approached, just a wary resignation, as if expecting nothing from human contact. The circle, worn into the dirt around his chain's reach, was the stark physical evidence of his limited existence, 6 feet in any direction for 7 years. Most dogs in these conditions become aggressive or completely shut down, Mercer later reported. This one just seemed patient, like he was waiting for something. The property owner, 87-year-old Walter Griffin, was found inside the house, himself living in concerning conditions. According to neighbors, after his wife died years earlier, Walter had gradually withdrawn from society. The German Shepherd, acquired as a puppy before his wife's passing, had been relegated to outside life as Walter's health and mental state deteriorated. "I feed him when I remember," Walter told social services, who had been called to assess his situation. "My Martha wanted a dog for protection. I never did like animals in the house." With Walter's reluctant permission and his subsequent placement in assisted living, Sunflower County Animal Rescue was authorized to remove the dog from the property. Lisa Hernandez, the rescue's director, arrived with proper equipment and a transport crate. "We're going to help you, buddy," she told the German Shepherd, who watched her with amber eyes that seemed too calm, too knowing for a dog who had known only neglect. "You're getting out of here today." Only when Lisa approached with bolt cutters to remove the chain did the dog show any reaction, rising stiffly to his feet, his tail giving a hesitant wag. As the heavy chain fell away, Lisa examined the wound around his neck where the collar had gradually cut into his flesh as he grew, creating a permanent scar tissue ridge beneath his fur. "We'll call you Sentinel," she decided, gently guiding him toward the transport crate, "because you stood guard all these years, even when no one was watching over you." The German Shepherd, now named Sentinel, walked with difficulty into the crate, his muscles stiff from years of limited movement, his paw pads tender from standing on the same hard-packed dirt. He made no sound during the entire process, no barks of fear or growls of warning. His silence was perhaps the most haunting aspect of his demeanor. As they drove away from the property, Lisa glanced back at Sentinel through the rearview mirror. The German Shepherd wasn't looking back at his former home. Instead, his gaze was fixed forward through the windshield, as if somehow understanding that his life had irrevocably changed. What Lisa couldn't know then was how remarkably Sentinel would adapt to freedom after a lifetime of confinement, or the shocking discovery that would soon turn this seemingly straightforward rescue into something far more extraordinary. Sentinel's arrival at Sunflower County Animal Rescue caused a stir among staff and volunteers. Many had seen neglect cases before, but something about the quiet dignity of the German Shepherd touched everyone who met him. He doesn't cower or show fear aggression like most chaining cases, observed Melissa Chen, the rescue's lead behaviorist. It's as if the chain restricted his body but couldn't touch his spirit. The first order of business was addressing Sentinel's medical needs. Dr. James Wilson, the rescue's veterinarian, found numerous health issues requiring immediate attention: severe malnutrition, heartworm disease, pressure wounds from the embedded collar, muscle atrophy, and chronically overgrown nails that had altered his gait. Physically, we're looking at several months of rehabilitation, Dr. Wilson explained to Lisa. The heartworm treatment alone will take time, and his muscle tone needs to be rebuilt gradually, but I'm more concerned about potential behavioral issues. Dogs chained for this long typically have significant psychological trauma, yet Sentinel defied expectations from the start. Despite never having been inside a building before, he adapted to kennel life with remarkable calm. He accepted medical treatments without resistance, as if understanding the help being offered. Most surprising was his immediate responsiveness to human kindness. It's like he's been waiting his whole life for someone to be gentle with him, Lisa remarked after Sentinel leaned against her during his first bathing session. He's not learning to trust humans. He already knows how. He just never had the chance to show it. The rescue team developed a specialized rehabilitation plan for Sentinel. Volunteer Rachel Torres, a retired physical therapist, designed a program to gradually rebuild his atrophied muscles. Short, gentle walks progressed to hydrotherapy sessions in a kiddie pool, allowing him to strengthen his legs without strain. Massage therapy helped restore circulation to areas damaged by years of pressure and inactivity. While his physical rehabilitation progressed steadily, the true revelation was Sentinel's temperament. Despite 7 years of neglect, he showed no signs of aggression toward humans or other animals. He approached each new experience with cautious curiosity rather than fear. Most remarkably, he seemed to inherently understand basic commands, suggesting someone had trained him as a puppy before his long confinement began. He sat perfectly when I held up a treat, volunteered Mark Stevens reported with amazement. No training, no prompting, just natural response. Someone invested time in him before he was chained. As news of Sentinel's story spread through the rescue's social media channels, adoption inquiries poured in. His gentle demeanor and heartbreaking backstory touched people across the country. But Lisa was determined to find him the perfect placement, someone who understood the special needs of a dog transitioning from such extreme restriction to normal life. He needs more than just a loving home, she explained to potential adopters. He needs someone who will continue his rehabilitation and help him experience all the things he's missed for 7 years. 3 weeks into his rehabilitation, during a supervised exploration session in the rescue's fenced yard, volunteers witnessed a breakthrough moment. Sentinel, who had been cautiously investigating the space, suddenly broke into a run. His first full gallop since being rescued. Though his movements were still stiff and uncoordinated, the joy in his expression was unmistakable. He's discovering what it means to be a dog, Rachel observed, wiping away tears as they watched him make another jubilant circuit of the yard. That evening, Lisa received an email that stood out among the adoption inquiries. The detailed message came from Michael Garrison, a 42-year-old former military canine handler who now worked as a physical therapist specializing in rehabilitation. His experience with both dogs and physical recovery protocols made him an ideal candidate, but it was something else in his message that caught Lisa's attention. I don't just want to give Sentinel a home, Michael wrote. I want to help him reclaim the life he should have had. Every day should bring him a new experience to make up for the years he lost. After a thorough vetting process and several video calls, Lisa felt confident that Michael represented Sentinel's best chance at a complete recovery. What she couldn't anticipate was how this carefully considered placement would lead to a discovery that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Sentinel's past. Michael Garrison's home in the Mississippi countryside offered everything Sentinel needed for his continuing rehabilitation. The single-story house sat on 5 acres of partially wooded land with a spring-fed pond, providing varied terrain for strengthening exercises. A secure fence encompassed a large yard, with wider explorations possible under supervision. Inside, Michael had prepared a comfortable corner in the living room, though he expected Sentinel might need time to adjust to indoor living. He might prefer to start with a covered porch area, Michael had reasoned during his home inspection with Lisa. Going from a lifetime outdoors to suddenly being inside could be overwhelming, but Sentinel surprised them once again. When they arrived after the 3-hour drive from the rescue, Michael opened the transport crate expecting the German Shepherd to need coaxing. Instead, Sentinel calmly exited the crate, carefully surveyed the unfamiliar surroundings, then followed Michael into the house as if he'd been doing so his entire life. I've never seen a transition like this, Lisa marveled as Sentinel methodically inspected each room of the house, neither fearful nor overexcited. It's like he intuitively understands this is his home now. After Lisa's departure, Michael began the careful process of introducing Sentinel to his new life. Drawing on his experience with military dogs transitioning to civilian environments, he established consistent routines to provide security while gradually introducing new experiences. Each day brought small but significant milestones. The first time Sentinel encountered stairs, he studied them thoughtfully before carefully navigating each step. When presented with a soft bed, he circled it several times before cautiously settling in, as if disbelieving such comfort was meant for him. The sound of the television initially caused his ears to prick with alertness, but he soon relaxed, seemingly enjoying the human voices and activity. "You're processing everything so carefully," Michael observed, "taking it all in, figuring out this new world." The most remarkable moments came during their outdoor sessions. Despite his still recovering body, Sentinel showed increasing confidence exploring the property. His movements became more fluid as atrophied muscles strengthened. He demonstrated a natural grace that suggested what he might have been like without years of confinement. Michael documented each development meticulously, sharing updates with the rescue team and the growing online community following Sentinel's journey. Videos of his first swim in the pond, his discovery of squeaky toys, and his increasingly coordinated running captivated viewers worldwide. "He's not just adapting," Michael told his followers. "He's flourishing. Every day, I see less of the chained dog and more of the dog he was always meant to be." By the end of the first month, Sentinel's physical transformation was remarkable. Proper nutrition had added healthy weight to his once gaunt frame. Regular grooming had transformed his dull coat into the gleaming black and tan characteristic of his breed. The wound around his neck was healing, though the scarring would remain permanent, a reminder of his past that Michael chose not to hide with bandanas or collars unless necessary. "His scars are a part of his story," Michael explained in one update. "They show what he overcame, not what defined him." More significant than the physical changes was Sentinel's emotional blossoming. The reserved, patient dog from the rescue was revealing new facets of his personality. He developed an endearing morning routine of carrying his favorite toy to greet Michael at bedside. He showed an unexpected playfulness during their evening games in the yard. Most touchingly, he began seeking physical affection, leaning against Michael during quiet moments, or resting his head on his human's lap during evening reading sessions. "He's not just accepting love," Michael observed. "He's actively asking for it now." Yet amidst these positive developments, Michael noticed something puzzling. Occasionally, Sentinel would stop during their property walks, fix his gaze on the distant tree line, and stand in perfect alertness, as if waiting for something or someone. These moments would pass quickly, but they occurred regularly enough to catch Michael's attention. "What are you looking for out there, buddy?" he asked during one such incident, receiving only a brief glance before Sentinel resumed their walk. The question lingered in Michael's mind, an early hint of the mystery that would soon unfold in an unexpected way, one that would challenge everything they thought they knew about Sentinel's past and reveal a truth more remarkable than anyone could have imagined. 6 weeks into Sentinel's new life, Michael noticed an intriguing pattern developing. During their evening walks, the German Shepherd consistently showed interest in a particular direction, often leading Michael toward the eastern boundary of the property. This behavior became more pronounced whenever they ventured near the old logging trail that marked the edge of Michael's land. "You really want to explore that way, don't you?" Michael observed after Sentinel paused at their boundary for the third consecutive evening. Curious about this persistent interest, Michael decided to extend their walk along the public logging trail. Sentinel moved with newfound purpose, his posture alert but relaxed, occasionally looking back as if ensuring Michael was still following. A half-mile down the trail, they reached a fork. Without hesitation, Sentinel took the less-traveled path leading deeper into the woods. Another quarter-mile brought them to a clearing where the remains of an old hunting cabin stood, its roof partially collapsed and windows long gone. Sentinel's behavior changed dramatically. He circled the cabin with increasing excitement, sniffing intently at the threshold before looking back at Michael with an intensity that seemed almost communicative. "What is it, boy? What's here?" Michael asked, approaching cautiously. The cabin's interior was empty save for broken furniture and years of accumulated leaves blown through the open windows. Yet Sentinel moved purposefully to a specific corner, pawing at the warped floorboards and whining softly. The first vocalization Michael had heard from him. Using his phone's flashlight, Michael examined the area more closely. The floorboards Sentinel indicated appeared different from the others, newer, less weathered. Curiosity piqued. Michael leveraged a loose board with a fallen branch, revealing a small space beneath the floor. Inside was a metal box, tarnished with age, but intact. Michael carefully extracted it while Sentinel watched with focused attention. The unlocked box contained several items: a faded photograph of a younger man in military uniform, standing beside a German Shepherd puppy, a service medal, and a weathered notebook. The photograph showed a man in his 30s with the distinctive appearance of Sentinel as a puppy, his ears not yet fully erect. The dog in the photo wore a working vest with patches suggesting specialized training. Most surprisingly, the notebook contained detailed training logs for a dog named Ranger, recording advanced obedience, tracking, and even explosive detection exercises. "Ranger," Michael said experimentally. The German Shepherd's reaction was immediate, head up, ears forward, full attention engaged. "Is that you? Were you Ranger?" The discovery raised profound questions. If Sentinel, now apparently once named Ranger, had been a trained working dog, how had he ended up chained in a rural backyard for 7 years? The training logs dated back nearly a decade, with the final entry simply stating, "Deployment confirmed. Will resume training upon return." Michael documented his findings and contacted Lisa at the rescue, who promised to research potential connections to military or police canine programs. Additionally, Michael reached out to his former military contacts who might help identify the uniform and medals in the photograph. That evening, Michael sat on his porch with Sentinel, or Ranger, beside him, contemplating the implications of their discovery. On impulse, he decided to test a theory. "Ranger, position," he commanded firmly, using a standard working dog instruction not previously used with Sentinel. The response was immediate and unmistakable. The German Shepherd smoothly moved to a perfect heel position at Michael's left side, sitting attentively with a focus and precision that could only come from extensive training. "Search," Michael tried next, Pointing toward a garden glove he placed several yards away. Without hesitation, Ranger trotted to the glove, sniffed it thoroughly, and retrieved it with gentle precision, returning to a perfect sitting position facing Michael. "You remember?" Michael whispered, emotion tightening his throat. "All these years, and you remember everything." Over the next several days, Michael carefully tested additional commands. The results were consistent and astonishing. Despite 7 years of neglect and confinement, Ranger retained virtually all his training. He responded to hand signals, verbal commands in multiple languages, and complex multi-step instructions. His detection skills remained sharp, easily finding objects Michael hid throughout the property based on scent alone. "This isn't just basic obedience," Michael explained in his update to Lisa. "This is specialized working dog training at an advanced level. No ordinary pet owner would have invested this kind of training in a dog only to chain him for 7 years. Something doesn't add up." The mystery deepened when Michael's military contact identified the uniform in the photograph as belonging to a handler in an elite K9 unit specializing in explosive detection. The service medal was awarded specifically for combat operations involving specialized K9 units. Whoever this handler was, his friend explained, he and his dog were the real deal, the kind of team deployed for the most sensitive and dangerous operations. As these discoveries accumulated, a new picture of Sentinel Ranger emerged, not just a neglected pet, but a highly trained working dog with a mysterious past that somehow led to his abandonment and confinement. The contrast between his capabilities and his years of imprisonment became even more heartbreaking with each new revelation. What Michael couldn't yet know was that the search for answers about Ranger's past would soon intersect with events that would put his recovered skills to the ultimate test and reveal the truth behind the 7 lost years of this extraordinary dog's life. 2 months after the discovery of the metal box, Michael's investigation into Ranger's background yielded its first significant lead. His military contacts identified the man in the photograph as Staff Sergeant James Cooper, formerly assigned to an elite K9 unit specializing in explosive detection. According to military records, Cooper and his K9 partner had served with distinction in Afghanistan until Cooper was severely injured in an IED incident 8 years earlier. What happened after Cooper's injury remained unclear. His military service ended with an honorable discharge and a Purple Heart, but the records contained no information about his K9 partner's disposition. It was as if Ranger had simply vanished from official documentation. After numerous inquiries, Michael finally located a retired handler from the same unit who remembered Cooper and his dog. "Cooper and Ranger were one of our best teams," the former handler recalled during their phone conversation. After Cooper's injury, the standard protocol would have been to reassign Ranger to another handler or transition him to civilian law enforcement, but Cooper was adamant about keeping him. He had family in Mississippi who could take the dog while he recovered. Given his service record and condition, the higher-ups approved the arrangement as a compassionate exception. This information provided the first plausible connection between the highly trained military K9 and the dog who spent 7 years chained in rural Mississippi. If Cooper had sent Ranger to stay with family, possibly Walter Griffin, though the relationship remained unclear, what had prevented him from reclaiming his partner? Michael's search for Cooper himself hit consistent dead ends. The address listed in his military records was no longer valid, and phone numbers had been disconnected. Social media searches yielded nothing, suggesting either a deliberate withdrawal from public life or, more concerningly, the possibility that Cooper might not have survived his injuries long term. While this investigation continued, Ranger's transformation accelerated. Now responding consistently to his original name, he demonstrated increasing confidence and capability. The physical rehabilitation had progressed remarkably, with muscle tone and coordination nearly restored to what would be expected of a dog his age, without the years of confinement. More impressive was the reemergence of his working dog capabilities. Michael, drawing on his own canine handling experience, began incorporating structured training sessions that utilized Ranger's remembered skills. The German Shepherd thrived with these mental challenges, solving increasingly complex problems and demonstrating extraordinary scent discrimination abilities. He's not just remembering his training, Michael noted in one of his regular video updates for supporters. He's actively applying it to new situations. His problem-solving abilities are exceptional. The mystery of Ranger's past and the evident mismatch between his advanced capabilities and his years of neglect created growing interest in his story. A local news station featured a segment on his rehabilitation and mysterious military background, which was subsequently picked up by several national outlets. This expanded coverage led to an unexpected breakthrough. On a stormy evening in October, Michael received a phone call from an unknown number. The man on the line identified himself as Dr. Thomas Reynolds, a physician from a VA medical center in Tennessee. "I saw the news story about Ranger," he explained. "I believe I may have information about James Cooper. He was my patient for several years after his injury." According to Dr. Reynolds, Cooper had suffered traumatic brain injury and severe physical trauma in the explosion that ended his military career. After multiple surgeries and initial rehabilitation, he had been transferred to the VA facility in Tennessee for long-term care. Cooper's initial prognosis was poor, Dr. Reynolds explained. He spent nearly a year in a minimally conscious state. When he began to show improvement, his recovery was complicated by severe PTSD and memory issues. For the first 3 years, he had only fragments of memory from his life before the injury. This information offered the first plausible explanation for why Cooper had never reclaimed his canine partner. In his compromised state, he might not have remembered Ranger clearly or been capable of caring for him. Family members, possibly including Walter Griffin, might have agreed to temporarily care for the dog but proved unequipped for the responsibility. Cooper repeatedly mentioned a dog during his more lucid periods, Dr. Reynolds continued. But given his cognitive state, the staff assumed it was confabulation, a false memory common in TBI patients. No family members ever mentioned a service dog when they visited, which became increasingly rare over the years. Most significantly, Dr. Reynolds revealed that Cooper had shown remarkable improvement over the past 2 years, regaining substantial cognitive function and physical capability. He had recently been discharged to a transitional living facility with the goal of eventual independent living. He still has challenges, the doctor cautioned. His memory has gaps, and he deals with ongoing PTSD symptoms. But he's functional now, aware of his surroundings, and actively engaged in his continued rehabilitation. When Michael asked if Cooper might be capable of reconnecting with Ranger, Dr. Reynolds was cautiously optimistic. It could potentially be beneficial for his recovery. Familiar connections from his pre-injury life sometimes help bridge memory gaps, but it would need to be approached carefully with appropriate psychological support. This conversation opened the possibility of a reunion that had seemed impossible just days earlier. After consulting with Lisa from the rescue and several veterinary behaviorists, Michael began the sensitive process of trying to contact James Cooper directly. What none of them could anticipate was how events would accelerate dramatically before this careful plan could unfold, or how Ranger would demonstrate that his years of confinement had done nothing to diminish the extraordinary capabilities that made him an elite working dog. 3 days after speaking with Dr. Reynolds, while the search for a direct contact with James Cooper continued, Michael awoke to urgent weather alerts on his phone. An unseasonable hurricane had strengthened overnight and shifted course, now projected to make landfall near the Mississippi-Louisiana border within 24 hours. Their area was under mandatory evacuation orders. Michael quickly began preparations, gathering essential supplies and securing the property as best he could. Ranger seemed to sense the urgency, staying close and watching Michael's activities with alert attention. As they prepared to leave, Michael received an emergency notification. The transitional living facility where James Cooper resided was directly in the hurricane's projected path. The facility was being evacuated, but in the chaos, several residents, including Cooper, had become separated from the main evacuation group. This information created an agonizing dilemma. The sensible course was to evacuate immediately as ordered, but knowing that Ranger's former handler, the man who had trained him, served with him, and then lost him through circumstances beyond his control, might be in danger was impossible to ignore. After a moment's consideration, Michael made his decision. Having served in multiple disaster response scenarios during his military career, he had the training to navigate dangerous conditions. More importantly, he had Ranger, a dog whose original training had included search and rescue operations. "We're going to find him," Michael told Ranger, securing the specialized harness he had purchased after discovering the German Shepherd's working background. "We're going to find Cooper." They departed immediately, driving south toward the transitional facility against the flow of evacuation traffic. Rain had already begun falling heavily, and wind gusts buffeted the vehicle as they approached the coastal region. When fallen trees blocked the main road 5 miles from the facility, they continued on foot. Ranger moving confidently alongside Michael despite the deteriorating conditions. The facility itself was eerily empty when they arrived, its residents and staff mostly evacuated hours earlier. A security guard confirmed that Cooper and 2 other residents with mobility issues had been placed in a transport van that subsequently took a different evacuation route from the main group. The van had last reported location approximately 3 miles away before communication was lost. Michael showed the guard the photograph from the metal box. "This is James Cooper with his military canine. That same dog is with me now. We can help find them." With the location of the missing van narrowed down, Michael and Ranger began a systematic search along the most likely route, fighting against strengthening winds and increasingly heavy rainfall. Michael carried emergency supplies and first aid equipment in his backpack, hoping they wouldn't be needed, but prepared for worst-case scenarios. For nearly 2 hours, they searched without success, conditions worsening by the minute as the hurricane's outer bands reached them. Just as Michael began to consider whether continuing was too dangerous, Ranger's behavior changed dramatically. Despite the howling wind and driving rain, the German Shepherd suddenly lifted his head, testing the air currents. His body language transformed instantly from methodical searching to focused intensity. Without waiting for commands, he altered course, pulling Michael toward a barely visible side road partially obscured by fallen branches. "You've got something," Michael acknowledged, trusting Ranger's sudden certainty. "Show me." Ranger moved with renewed purpose, navigating the debris-strewn path with determination. A quarter-mile down the flooded road, they found the evacuation van, tilted at a precarious angle, where it had slid off the road into a ditch. The rising water had reached the vehicle's doors, making the situation increasingly dangerous for anyone trapped inside. Michael approached cautiously, Ranger at his side. Through the van's windows, he could make out 3 people inside: an elderly man in a wheelchair, a middle-aged woman attempting to force open a jammed door, and a third figure seated in the back. Using his emergency tools, Michael managed to force open the rear door, helping the woman out first. "James Cooper? Is he with you?" Michael asked urgently as Ranger inspected each person with focused attention. "Jim's in the back," the woman explained, pointing to the third passenger. "He has mobility issues from a war injury. He was a soldier." Michael turned his attention to the figure still inside, a man in his early 40s with a strong build now compromised by injury, using a cane to struggle toward the exit. As Michael helped him navigate the tilted vehicle floor, Ranger's behavior changed yet again. The German Shepherd had moved to the open door, his entire body vibrating with intensity as he focused on the emerging man. When Cooper finally exited the vehicle, Ranger didn't move forward. Instead, he held a perfect sit-stay, his eyes locked on Cooper's face with an unwavering gaze that communicated more than any human words could express. For a long moment, Cooper seemed confused, his eyes moving from the dog to Michael and back again. Then something shifted in his expression, a flash of recognition followed by disbelief. "Ranger?" he whispered, his voice barely audible above the storm. "Is that Ranger?" The German Shepherd's response removed any doubt. At the sound of his name in that particular voice, Ranger broke his formal posture and moved forward with controlled enthusiasm, carefully accounting for Cooper's mobility limitations while still communicating unmistakable recognition and joy. "It's him," Michael confirmed, watching in amazement as the years of separation dissolved in an instant of recognition. "This is your Ranger." What followed was a moment of connection so profound that even the approaching hurricane seemed temporarily irrelevant. Cooper knelt despite his physical pain, arms encircling the dog who had been his partner and protector during the most dangerous period of his life, the dog he had lost to circumstances and brain injury, but who had somehow found his way back through an extraordinary sequence of events. "I remember," Cooper said, his voice breaking as Ranger pressed against him with gentle insistence. "They told me you were being cared for. I couldn't remember where or by whom. When I finally started recovering enough to ask, no one knew what had happened to you." The emotional reunion was necessarily brief as the storm intensified around them. With Cooper and the other evacuees rescued from the immediate danger, Michael led the group toward a designated emergency shelter several miles inland. Throughout the journey, Ranger remained attentive to both Michael and Cooper, seamlessly adapting to the unexpected dynamics of having both his current caretaker and his original handler present. At the emergency shelter, as medical personnel attended to the evacuees, Cooper filled in the gaps in Ranger's story. After his injury, arrangements had been made for Cooper's uncle, Walter Griffin, to temporarily care for Ranger while Cooper underwent initial treatment. What should have been a short-term arrangement extended indefinitely as Cooper's condition proved more serious than initially assessed. "Uncle Walter was my only family, but he was already declining when I was deployed," Cooper explained. "I had no idea his condition had worsened so much, or that he would be unable to properly care for Ranger. By the time I was conscious enough to ask about my dog, years had passed and my uncle wasn't answering his phone." The pieces of the puzzle finally fit together. Walter Griffin, already elderly and beginning cognitive decline when he took responsibility for Ranger, had become increasingly unable to care for himself, let alone a highly trained working dog. Without the knowledge or resources to maintain Ranger's training and exercise needs, he had resorted to chaining him, a misguided attempt to keep the valuable dog safe while being unable to properly contain him otherwise. As Cooper and Michael shared information, the full circle of Ranger's journey became clear. The dog had survived 7 years of neglect without losing his training, his temperament, or his fundamental connection to the handler who had been forced to leave him behind. The hurricane raged through the night, but within the shelter a different kind of storm was passing, one of emotion, reconnection, and the healing of wounds both physical and psychological. What remained to be determined, once the immediate emergency passed, was what this remarkable reunion would mean for Ranger's future, and for the two men whose lives had become unexpectedly intertwined through their connection to this extraordinary dog. In the aftermath of the hurricane, as communities began the long process of recovery, a different kind of rebuilding was taking place between James Cooper, Michael Garrison, and the remarkable German Shepherd who connected them. The immediate crisis had forced an unexpected reunion, but the path forward required careful consideration of what would best serve all involved, especially Ranger. Cooper, now residing temporarily at Michael's home until his transitional facility reopened, was making remarkable progress in his own recovery. The reunion with Ranger seemed to have unlocked something in his healing process. Memories previously fragmented began to connect, and his physical therapy showed accelerated improvement as daily interactions with Ranger motivated him to push beyond perceived limitations. The neurologists talk about neuroplasticity, the brain forming new pathways around damaged areas. Cooper explained one evening as they watched Ranger patrolling the property perimeter, a self-appointed security check he performed each sunset. But they don't fully understand how emotional connections can drive that process. Having Ranger back is healing parts of me that medication and therapy couldn't reach. For Ranger himself, the presence of both his original handler and his rescuer created an interesting dynamic. He responded to both men with clear affection and respect, adapting his behavior to accommodate Cooper's physical limitations while maintaining the working partnership he had developed with Michael. As Cooper's stay extended from days into weeks, the inevitable question loomed larger. What would happen when he was cleared to live independently again? The obvious assumption might have been that Ranger would return to his original handler, completing the circle of their interrupted partnership. But the reality proved more nuanced. "I'm not the same person who trained him," Cooper acknowledged during a particularly honest conversation. "And he's not the same dog. We've both been through experiences that changed us. What matters now is what's best for him going forward." Michael, despite the deep bond he had formed with Ranger, remained committed to whatever outcome would best serve both the dog and the man who had originally trained him. "This was always about giving Ranger the life he deserved," he maintained. "If that means he goes with you when you're settled, that's what should happen." The matter resolved itself in an unexpected way. As Cooper's recovery progressed and he began searching for permanent housing, he discovered a property adjacent to Michael's land, a small house on 3 acres that had sustained minor hurricane damage and was being sold below market value. With his VA benefits and savings, the property was within his reach. "I'm not taking Ranger away from the home he's finally found," Cooper explained when he shared his decision. "I'm joining him there. If you're willing to have me as a neighbor, it gives us both what we need without forcing another disruption in his life." This solution proved ideal for all concerned. Cooper would be close enough for daily interaction with Ranger while establishing his independence. Michael would maintain his caretaking role while gaining a neighbor who understood the extraordinary dog they both cherished. Most importantly, Ranger would keep the stability of his current home while regaining the connection with his first handler. As winter yielded to spring, the arrangement blossomed into something neither man had anticipated. Cooper's house renovation became a shared project, with Michael offering his experience in property maintenance and Cooper contributing specialized carpentry skills retained from pre-military training. Ranger supervised these activities with characteristic attentiveness, seemingly content with the expanded family unit taking shape around him. The most remarkable development was Ranger's evolving role in their lives. No longer simply a pet or even a service animal, he became something unique, a bridge between past and present, a catalyst for healing, and a daily reminder of resilience. Cooper's therapy team, initially skeptical about the unorthodox living arrangement, soon documented the measurable benefits to his recovery. "His progress has accelerated beyond our expectations," Dr. Thomas Reynolds noted during a follow-up consultation. "The consistent interaction with his former canine partner provides cognitive and emotional stimulation that complements traditional therapy approaches. We're actually documenting this case for potential research on animal-assisted therapy for TBI recovery." Ranger, now 9 years old, but still vigorous, thrived in his expanded territory. He developed a routine that included morning training sessions with Cooper, who gradually reclaimed his role as handler, and afternoon exploration with Michael across the combined properties. Each man contributed different elements to his care and enrichment, creating a balanced environment that utilized all aspects of his abilities and personality. Their story gained national attention when a documentary filmmaker interested in military working dogs featured them in a project about canine veterans. The resulting film, Unbroken Chain, showcased not only Ranger's extraordinary journey, but the broader issues of working dog placement after service and the healing potential of human-animal bonds. At the documentary's premiere, Cooper addressed the audience with Ranger sitting attentively at his side. 7 years of his life were spent at the end of a chain, his abilities wasted and his spirit tested, But what amazes me isn't that he survived those years, it's that he emerged from them with his essential nature intact. He never forgot his training, his purpose, or his capacity for connection. The film's success led to increased awareness and support for programs connecting veterans with service dogs, including a foundation established in Ranger's name to help place retired military working dogs with handlers recovering from combat injuries. For Ranger himself, the most significant change was simpler: the freedom to choose where he wanted to be. Some days he spent largely with Cooper, supporting his ongoing physical therapy and accompanying him to VA appointments where he became a beloved, regular visitor, instinctively comforting other veterans. Other days he remained with Michael, participating in training demonstrations for local search and rescue teams who benefited from his experience and exceptional skills. Each evening, regardless of how he spent his day, Ranger made the same choice: settling in the open area between the two properties, from where he could monitor both homes and, in a sense, keep his expanded pack together. The chain that had once limited his world to a 6-foot circle had been replaced by boundless possibilities and connections. The dog who had spent 7 years as a forgotten sentinel now served a different kind of watch, not chained to a tree, but anchored by choice to the people who recognized his worth and honored his journey. If there is one thing Ranger has taught us, Michael reflected during the documentary's final scenes, is that chains come in many forms. Some are physical, like the one that held him for 7 years. Others are internal, the limitations we place on ourselves, the past we can't let go of, the futures we can't imagine. Ranger broke free of both kinds. For those who followed Ranger's story, the most powerful image wasn't the heartbreaking before photos or even the triumphant shots of his recovery. It was the simple, daily sight of an aging German Shepherd moving freely between two homes, choosing his path without restriction. His dignified presence a reminder that even after years of limitation, freedom, purpose, and connection remain possible. Ranger lived out his remaining years in this arrangement, eventually passing peacefully at age 13, surrounded by both men who had played such pivotal roles in his extraordinary life. His legacy continued through the foundation established in his name, which had successfully placed hundreds of working dogs with veterans who, like Cooper, found healing through these special connections. The shock that had initially captivated followers of Ranger's story, the unexpected reunion with his original handler after 7 lost years, had evolved into something more profound, a recognition that some bonds transcend time, trauma, and separation. Ranger's journey from chain sentinel to healing catalyst demonstrated that second chances sometimes arrive in unexpected forms, and that freedom once experienced can never be truly forgotten. If this story touched your heart, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and turn on notifications. Share with someone who needs inspiration today. Remember that chains, whether physical or emotional, are never the end of the story, and that freedom, purpose, and connection await even after the darkest chapters of our lives.